what to say there or here.
We can hear you. Just keep going.
There was, the war had been declared against Germany by our government in 1939. Well, they started off with bombing us. The bombs were okay. Then they did the buzz bombs. Well, we could hear those. Then they started with rockets. Well, that killed a lot of people, the rockets, because we couldn't hear them, we couldn't see them. So we had to take our chances on that. Now, my husband, Tom, he decided, like most young British males, to volunteer for the army. And he enlisted and was sent for training, then shipped off to spend the next 6 years in Italy and Africa fighting for our freedom. And back home offered a new and unique challenge for anyone who couldn't join the regular forces. I was already employed at the Army and Navy stores in Victoria, in London. Well, I've got to explain to you what the Army and Navy stores is. It was started by a retired Army officer and a retired Navy officer, and it was a beautiful place, and it was a store like Harrods. That's why I'm telling you that, because the Army and Navy stores, you know, it doesn't sound much, does it? And it was in Victoria Street in London. And I was living in a place called Earlsfield in South London with my mum and dad. It didn't take much time for Germany to target London, and every night we were under attack. Well, life then completely changed. We lived from day to day on rations and hope. Hope in our winning, which of course was Winston Churchill, to make the right decisions and our troops to come home safe. It was an evil and dark time in our history. Of course, I was younger then, so I guess I could take it. One night there was a nasty air raid and a bomb fell in the cemetery which missed the railway that the Germans were after, and the blast of the bomb hit the back of Mum and Dad's house. We were unable to make it to the underground shelter, so we took shelter in the back bedroom. I had just given birth to Jeffrey, who was 3 months old at the time, and we were buried in the rubble there for 8 to 9 hours. And it was sad, but Jeffrey didn't make it. That's the baby. After that experience, Mum and Dad went up to Preston in Lancashire. Now, that was up the north of England, and it didn't have any raids up there. I mean, Germany was after London, the south, and they lived with my eldest sister, who was up there. And I went to live with my brother in Surrey. And my brother had a shoe repair business, and he was a volunteer firefighter. Anyway, his business was bombed, so he was hired full-time as a firefighter. And he had 2 children, and they were evacuated. I forgot that thing.
Still there.
Had 2 children, and they were evacuated with the rest of the children in London and the surrounding area. I left the Army and Navy stores to help collect the money for the evacuated children. You see, the parents had to pay for their children to be evacuated, and some of them were evacuated to Canada. And I got a job then on the buses as a conductor. Well, that was funny. But after a couple of days, I couldn't take the motion and the diesel fumes. So I went to the inspector and said, I quit. Well, he said, you can't quit in wartime. So you will have to go to jail. So I said, I didn't care, and they sent me home. And a couple of days later, I had a knock on the door, and someone from the government said to report to this address. It turned out to be a nondescript building address near the Marble Arch. I reported there and was escorted by an armed guard 5 floors below ground. I was thinking, oh, well, what's going to happen here? I was really nervous at the time because they made me sign all kinds of papers and said if I told anyone, even my closest friends or relatives, I would be tried for treason and executed under the War Measures Act. I was then escorted into a very secure area, fingerprinted and given a security badge. Then a double bomb-proof door was opened and I was led to my work area. What I saw that day, I have never repeated, even to Tom, my husband, all these years until Keith asked me about my veterans number this past summer. I'd forgotten about it, you know. You see, I wasn't given one. I figured it was okay to say what I did after 60 years because everyone is probably dead by now. I was enlisted into the Secret Service and I was to work with 5 other women to supply the merchant navy ships with all the supplies such as food, clothing and blankets, etc. for the entire British fleet. The reason for all the secrecy was because I knew the exact location of every vessel in the British Navy. It was my job to line up the delivery schedule of which merchant navy ship would deliver to which battleships. You know, I didn't know at the time how important I was.
Just to learn.
It was just like in the movies. There was a large blackboard at one end of the room and several people receiving positions, which in turn were related to the other people in charge of moving the wooden models of ships and subs around a scale model of the English Channel and the Atlantic Ocean. There was always top brass in the room and a lot of action when they were engaged in a battle. The sad thing was, we knew before anyone else when a ship went down. I went home every day and lied about my boring job as typing clerk and always change the subject if the subject became nosy. After the war, Britain was a mess. And if you didn't have children, you were put on the bottom of the list for jobs and accommodation. Well, I mean, after all, how would we have children when my husband was away for 6 years, huh? So we immigrated to Canada in 1951 and started all over again. That's it.